So we need to find hope somewhere. We need to find some hope somewhere so that it's not just constant disappointment. You've been let down, you've been disappointed. There's probably been times when you had your hopes up because he did well for a while, but it didn't last very long. And oh man, I'm not even going to get my hopes up anymore. We want to find a little piece of hope somewhere, and there's always going to be something somewhere. I'm going to come up with an example that one of the other NT ladies that came up with. If you can find something that consistently works in dealing with him, you found one thing that you know that every time I say or do this, it usually works out pretty well, or maybe there's something that if I make sure I don't say or do this thing, it usually works out pretty well. So now there's hope, because I know that given this, at least in this one little domain, I know that I can have some success. And then once you have success in that little tiny area, statistically speaking, you should be able to find a second area somewhere, and then you can start scaling up. So I'm going to give you an example that will help you make sense of this. We had an NT wife, and she said, every time I want to do something that he views as a radical change, when we're going to talk about a vacation or maybe purchase a nice used car or any kind of thing that gets outside of his structure, he's very uncooperative. Sometimes will just refuse flat out to even do it. So I had a little conversation with her that I'm going to have with you now, that people with ASD are slow processors. You can be very intuitive, very spontaneous. You can pretty much view a situation and gather enough data in your head to where you don't have to deliberate on it for months. He is like a slow 20-year-old computer with hardly any memory space, and you fire it up and it takes forever to come on, and then you try to open the window and the little thing spins around forever before the window opens up. He is exactly like that, exactly like that. He has to have time to process, sometimes as much as 24 hours. So this NT wife usually would present something to him. He would have some reservations. She would download that as he doesn't care, which I'm not faulting her. But then she would get a little pushy, which raised his anxiety. So now he not only had some reservations, but he went the next level, which he just flat out refused to do it. And she downloaded that as he's narcissistic. Now that she knows that he's a slow processor, and she wrote me a big long email about this. I'm giving you the summary. She goes, now when I have an important decision that I want his input or cooperation with, I put it out there and then I leave it alone. I don't touch it. I don't even mention it again. And after he's slept on it, thought about it, ruminated about it, he almost always will come back and go, yeah, I think I could do that. That's probably a pretty good idea. And so she totally flipped that thing around 180 degrees. She realized his slow processing has nothing to do with him being obstinate, uncooperative, neglectful, whatever other terms you might use. He had to have some time to think about it. And so that was her little piece of hope. She knew that 9 times out of 10, if she planted the seed and then kept her mouth shut and let him think about it, 9 times out of 10, he would be okay with it. And that was that one little piece of hope. But then she found another little niche that worked, another little key that worked in that particular lock. And so now she kind of got out of this rabbit hole of negativity bias and slowly got to the point where she's pretty disciplined and was more focusing on the positives. There certainly was negatives, but she wouldn't hyper-focus on those so much. She would find those little tiny moments of success and provide him with some acknowledgement and praise, which was very reinforcing for him. Your husband, he would love to be out of the doghouse. And when you just offer a few words of appreciation or, hey, I appreciate the fact that you did this, very reinforcing for him because he's used to always doing things wrong. He's used to always messing up. Feels like he never lives up to your expectations. And he's probably has even got to the point where it doesn't matter what I say or do, it's never going to be good enough, so he's quit trying. So this would be a way to kind of turn that.
Cognitive restructuring enables people on the autism spectrum to correct distorted conceptualizations and dysfunctional beliefs. The process involves challenging their current thinking with logical evidence and ensuring the rationalization and cognitive control of their emotions. Now, the first stage of cognitive restructuring is to establish the evidence for a particular belief. People on the autism spectrum often make false assumptions of their circumstances and the intentions of others, and they have a tendency to make a literal interpretation, and a casual comment may be taken out of context or may be taken to the extreme. All people are vulnerable to distorted conceptualizations, but people on the autism spectrum are less able to put things in perspective, to seek clarification, and to consider alternative explanations or responses. So neurotypical spouses can encourage their autistic spouse to be more flexible in their thinking and to seek clarification using questions or comments such as, "Are you joking?" or "I'm confused about what you just said." Such comments also can be used when misinterpreting someone's intentions, such as, "Did you do that deliberately?" And to rescue the situation after they've made an inappropriate response with a comment such as, "I'm sorry I offended you," or, "Oh, what should I have done instead?" One common effect of misinterpretation is the development of paranoia. The person on the autism spectrum can have difficulty distinguishing between accidental or deliberate intent. Now, neurotypical people will know from the context, body language, and character of the other person involved that the intent was not to cause distress or injury. However, people on the spectrum can focus primarily on the act and the consequence. So people on the spectrum may need to be trained in checking the evidence before responding and developing more accurate mind-reading skills. Cognitive restructuring also includes a process known as attribution retraining. The person on the spectrum may blame others exclusively and not consider his own contribution, or he can excessively blame himself for events. One aspect of ASD is a tendency for some people to adopt an attitude of arrogance or omnipotence where the perceived focus of control is external. For example, the person may have the thought, "I have no control," rather, "outside circumstances control me." Specific individuals are held responsible and become the target for retribution or punishment. And these individuals have considerable difficulty accepting that they themselves have contributed to the event. The opposite can occur when the person on the spectrum has extremely low self-esteem and feels personally responsible, which results in feelings of anxiety and guilt. Attribution retraining involves establishing the reality of the situation, the various participants' contributions to an incident, and determining how the individual can change his perception and response.
She's wanting to connect with you, and you're more wanting to connect with your special interest, we will say. So in the early going of the relationship, it's very possible that she was your special interest. That happens in many cases. And so she got the indication in the early going of the relationship, hey, he seems like a nice guy. I get empathy. I get emotional reciprocity. I get intimacy. I get sex. He seems like a good guy. And then when the newness of that relationship kind of wears off, typically he will gravitate back towards his original special interest, especially when the relationship gets messy. And I use terms a lot that I hear from the guys. And that term gets used a lot, messy. When we were dating, things were fun. We just went out to eat. We went out to drink. Whatever, it was fun and games, and it was okay. But then I had to meet her parents. Then when we got married, then we had kids. Now I have financial responsibility. And so as the relationship grew, which it's supposed to grow, of course, it got complicated. And the social and emotional aspects became replete. And at some level, you maybe kind of got over your head because when you kind of disconnected, she noticed that, and her being a team player and being very social, she'd try to get you to come back into the intimacy that you may have had in the early going of the relationship, but her message sucked. Her complaining and anger, her heart was in the right spot. She was doing the best that she knew how to do at the time. But her method of trying to pull you back in and get that intimacy and emotional reciprocity back raised your anxiety. So instead of getting you back in connected, your tendency was to pull away. So she kind of got the opposite of what she wanted. If you have autism spectrum disorder level 1, which is informally referred to as high-functioning autism, and formerly called Asperger's syndrome. It's still called Asperger's in some other parts of the world. And by the way, as a side note, if you got diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, even though they changed it in the DSM-5, you still technically have the diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome rather than ASD level 1. More information than you needed. It's a developmental disorder, which developmentally means that the social emotional part of the brain is less developed than the logical part of the brain, as evidenced by the fact that most people on the autism spectrum are not highly social. They can be, and they certainly have social skills, and they can certainly converse with coworkers, and they can converse with anybody if it's mostly around their special topic. And of course they have empathy. It really annoys the hell out of me when some NTs go, well, he doesn't have any empathy. And that is just, I don't know, what do I want to call it, dumb? But developmentally, the social and emotional stuff is low, which means that also your social and emotional needs are low, which causes a problem with her because her social and emotional needs are high. So you hooked up with this person who's way up here with her social and emotional needs. You could go all year and not talk about your feelings. You know, you don't really care about how you feel. Even if you ask him, how do you feel? Oh, fine. Well, fine, that technically is not an emotion. Oh, I feel okay. Well, okay is technically not an emotion. Okay, well, whatever then. And when she tells you how she feels, you wonder, why would she feel that way? I don't get that at all. So she's not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. But you see the huge mismatch. And you're paying the price for this gap. That's why you're still in the doghouse and probably enjoying being in there, because now you don't have to listen to her complaining that you're not way up here with her in the Department of Emotional Reciprocity, which is a whole nother problem, because when she is trying to pull you back in to being reciprocal, her message, and she did the best that she knew how to do. I'm not faulting her, but her message delivery raised your anxiety, which made you pull away even more. So, or it made you have a meltdown. So that's the point of this conversation here, is we want to change all of that. Instead of hiding or fighting, we want to stay right there and face the music. That's called assertiveness. So this little short speech here is going to be about avoiding the business of any version of a meltdown and avoiding the business of any version of a shutdown, and instead being in the middle there. Shutdown would be passive, meltdown would be aggressive, and the compromise, or somewhere in the middle ground there, would be assertiveness, and that's what we're going to be shooting for. And there, as you know, there's varying degrees of meltdowns. It could be as simple as just yelling. It could be as complicated as yelling, cussing, calling her every name in the book, criticizing the hell out of her, and punching a hole in the drywall. There's variations of shutdown. It could be just as simple as you sitting there and agreeing with her. Yeah, honey, sure. Yeah, right, whatever you say. Kind of a false agreement where you're basically just going along with whatever she says so she'll hurry up and shut the hell up. So she'll get the impression that you're going to follow through with what she's saying because she's annoying you. All the way to far end of the shutdown extreme where you don't talk to her for a week or two. Or you leave, or you go to the end of the house and get on your computer and she doesn't see you for the rest of the night. Both of those things are causing a problem because it's the opposite of emotional reciprocity, which is her big complaint. If she were here, she would say, yeah, I got a list long and deep, but the number one thing would be there's no emotional reciprocity. We don't connect at the emotional level. That would be her main complaint. And so when you shut down or meltdown, you are doing the absolute 180 degree opposite of an emotional connection. So I can't go in and rewire your brain because A, I wouldn't want to, and B, it doesn't need to be rewired. But we can certainly come up with a few tips to get you in the ballpark to be emotionally reciprocal. There's nothing that you need to do in the way of changing your personality. So there is way more positives associated with ASD level 1 than negative. Well, to the programmable computer we're on right now, for crying out loud, Bill Gates. Okay, so I don't want anybody to think that you're less of a person. And I think that's an important point to tell guys on the autism spectrum, because if you're like most other guys, your self-esteem is already in the toilet and has been there for a long time. It's not uncommon for him as a little boy to be a problem child at home, to be a problem student at school, has a hard time getting a girlfriend, has a hard time fitting in with peers, and so he just decides to take on solitary activities just to kind of avoid even trying to fit in. And then he finally hooks up with an NT woman, and they get married, and now he's now getting even more reminders about how he's falling short, not measuring up and not doing what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to try harder, and if you would just try harder, you would do better, and yada yada. A lifetime, in many cases, of disapproval. So there's nothing wrong with you. There's a lot different about you, but a lot of times different is good. Where would we be as a society, not just in 2021, but look back in history? There's been a ton of people with autism that have created and invented so many things that we would not have today without them. What we want to do, I call them workarounds, because they're not fixes in the sense that you can go back and now become a neurotypical. And I hate the term masking, but because that sounds kind of like you're trying to be deceitful. But there is nothing wrong. And by the way, neurotypicals do this too. There is nothing wrong with wanting to present yourself in the best possible light. That's just the smart thing to do. If the NTs want to be sarcastic and call that masking, which they tend to want to do that, that's fine. Go ahead and use that term. I don't care. The fact is, everybody, unless they have antisocial personality disorder, perhaps, they at some level do want to put their ego in the closet and pride aside and put on their best behavior so that they can get accepted by others. You could think of assertiveness, guys, as a balance between trying to get her needs met and protecting yourself. It's that balance. Before, a lot of guys on the spectrum have totally been in the business of protecting themselves. In other words, if things get a little hairy, they take a meltdown or a shutdown. So now I'm going to try to hang in there and actually listen to what she has to say and actually try to resolve this stuff, but I'm not going to be her whipping post. And she's not going to know when she crosses the line with me, and so I'm going to have to tell her point blank that this crosses up the line with me, and I'm not going to tolerate it. That's not being aggressive. That's not shutting down. That's not doing anything other than letting her know, I want to hear what you say, but I may have to take a time out. I may have to have these discussions at a different time of day. And I'm doing it for your benefit because I want to hear your message. And I'm going to save you from your old pattern of message delivery that influences me to not want to hear it. So one of the things you could do for me, it would be helpful if you have something that's pressing that you need to discuss with me. I'm willing to listen to one problem at a time earlier in the day, as long as we can keep the discussion fairly short. And if it goes on too long, I may have to take a time out. We may have to pick it up later. But I'm doing this for your benefit because I want to get your message. But the only way I'm going to get your message is if I keep my anxiety at bay so that I can think straight. I want to reiterate a couple points here, guys. I'm talking to the guys. You do have a job, and here it is. It's your job to love her, to be grateful for her, to do the best that you can to be emotionally reciprocal. We know there's some confines there. I'm not asking you to become neurotypical. I'm asking you to do the best you can with the cards you've been dealt. And that will have to be good enough, whether she doesn't think it's good enough or not. You have to, another one of your responsibilities is to extend grace and mercy when needed, and to simply be present instead of busy all the time with your tasks. She loves the things that you do for her, but equally she wants you to be with her, where there's not necessarily any doing for her, just I want to be present with you. I want to be physically close to you without any distractions. So those 5 things right there, that is your job. Cassandra syndrome is technically not a disorder. It's not in the Diagnosis and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders anyway, although I think there is some speculation that it might be at some point. Cassandra syndrome is, there's varying definitions of that, but the one that I use, and some people disagree with this, which is fine, and this is a message to the guys. You guys could go all year and not talk about feelings. You're very task-oriented. You're very logical. You're very independent. You're low in social and emotional needs. That's just the way it is. So be it. There's nothing wrong with that. Your wife has to get some emotional nurturing, some social connection, some emotional reciprocity, or she is not going to be mentally or physically healthy. So you don't need the social and emotional nurturing much. She has to have it. It's not optional. In the same way that breathing is not optional. You have to breathe. Water, not optional. Have to have it. Nutrition, in some shape, form, or fashion, have to have it. She is genetically, it's in her DNA, I have to have emotional connection or she suffers. And when I say suffer, I mean suffer in the sense that it can make her have mental health problems, it can make her have physical health problems. When she is not getting nurturing, emotional reciprocity, validation, give and take in conversation, affection, empathy, compassion, all of these things, it affects her mental and physical health. And she gets resentful. Why wouldn't she? And she deteriorates. She just deteriorates. And she makes the relationship worse because now she's become his number one source of anxiety. And so now he's doing more meltdowns and shutdowns than ever, which even worsens her condition. So wherever there is resentment, self-fulfilling prophecy is not far behind. And she will get the very thing that she didn't want. She has to have emotional connection. Has to have it. And if she doesn't get it, she can become very resentful about that. Why wouldn't she? Because she's not getting one of her primary needs met. It's kind of an emotional deprivation situation, emotional deprivation.
If you are in a neurodiverse marriage where one spouse is autistic and the other one is not, and you've been struggling for years and years, and you're kind of sick and tired of the routine, talk to me. Use me as your personal coach. I have groups, and I keep these groups small so that you can get a lot of one-on-one attention. I have 3 Q&A groups, one for ASD husbands, one for neurotypical wives, and I have a couples group where both spouses can attend. I also have 2 instructional groups, Cassandra Syndrome Recovery Group, to help you cultivate some strategies to recover from years of emotional deprivation, and the Men's Masterclass, in which we take a deep dive on developing social skills and emotional literacy in the context of the neurodiverse marriage. We meet 1 hour a week for 4 weeks. So how much longer are you willing to wait?